Dorm room tragedy, the case that shocked a campus. In April 2024, a quiet university campus in Florida became the center of a heartbreaking and deeply disturbing legal case. A 19-year-old freshman, later identified as Brianna Moore, was accused of giving birth alone in her college dorm bathroom and disposing of her newborn in a trash can. What began as whispers between roommates quickly turned into a full-scale criminal investigation, one that now carries consequences that could follow her for the rest of her life. According to investigators, Moore was living at McKay Hall while attending the University of Tampa. On the morning in question, several students reported hearing the faint cries of what sounded like a baby coming from a shared bathroom. At first, the noise raised confusion, not alarm. No one expected that an infant had actually been born inside the dorm. Later that day, one of Moore's roommates entered the bathroom and noticed a large amount of blood. Alarmed, she notified campus safety. Moore reportedly told authorities that the blood was the result of her menstrual cycle. For a brief moment, that explanation seemed to satisfy the immediate concern. However, the following day brought a discovery no student should ever have to make. Two students entered Moore's dorm room to collect a few personal items. While inside, one of them noticed a blood-soaked towel sitting inside a trash can. When the towel was nudged with an object, they felt something solid inside. Overcome with fear, they lifted the trash bag and carried it outside to campus security. When officers unwrapped the towel, they found the body of a deceased newborn baby girl. The medical examiner later revealed devastating findings. The infant had multiple broken ribs along the spine, small hemorrhages in both lungs, and the official cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation caused by compression of the torso. These findings immediately raised serious questions about how this baby died and whether it could have been prevented. Moore was taken in for questioning and interviewed by police more than once. According to her statements, she claimed she had no idea she was pregnant. She said she woke up feeling ill, went to the bathroom thinking she was sick, and suddenly went into labor without warning. She stated the baby cried briefly after birth, only for a few seconds before becoming silent. Moore admitted she wrapped the baby in a towel and remained in the bathroom for some time. She later took a shower, returned to her room, and eventually left the baby in the trash can. She told investigators she was scared, confused, and panicked. She did not call 911. She did not seek medical help, and she did not alert anyone about what happened. Police charged Moore with aggravated manslaughter, child neglect, unlawfully handling human remains, and failure to report a death. If convicted on all counts, she could face up to 30 years in prison. Prosecutors later offered her a plea deal, 20 years in prison followed by 10 years of probation. She refused it. Instead, she chose to take her case to trial, which is now scheduled to begin in March. Her decision not to accept the plea deal shocked many observers. But behind that choice lies the foundation of her defense, that the death of her baby was not intentional, but the result of panic, confusion, and a medical emergency she was completely unprepared for. And this is only the beginning.
As investigators worked to piece together the tragic events inside the dorm bathroom, Brianna Moore was brought in for questioning. What followed would become one of the most emotionally charged parts of the case, her recorded conversations with detectives. Inside the interrogation room, Moore appeared calm, withdrawn, and emotionally distant. Officers spoke to her in a soft manner, assuring her that they were not there to judge but to understand what had happened. At first, she struggled to explain how everything unfolded. Again and again, she repeated one central point: she never knew she was pregnant. Moore told officers that she woke up that morning feeling sick and dizzy. She believed she was experiencing stomach pain or vomiting. When she went into the bathroom, she said everything happened suddenly. According to her statement, she collapsed onto the floor and began experiencing intense pain. Pain she later realized was labor. She claimed the baby cried for only a few seconds after birth, before becoming completely unresponsive. At that moment, she says her mind shut down. She sat on the bathroom floor in shock, unsure of what to do, terrified that her life was about to change forever. When investigators asked why she did not call 911 or seek medical help, Moore's answer was simple: fear. She told police that she was scared of being exposed, ashamed, and panicked about what her family and classmates would think. She even admitted she considered taking the baby to a hospital for surrender, but by then she believed the child was already deceased. During questioning, detectives repeatedly asked her, "If you could go back, what would you do differently?" Her response was quiet and haunted. She said she would have gone straight to the hospital. As the investigation deepened, prosecutors began building a case based on what they believed was gross negligence. They argued that even if the birth was unplanned, Moore still had a legal duty to seek help. Her failure to do so, they claimed, directly caused the baby's death. But Moore's defense team saw the case very differently. Rather than claiming she was mentally insane or incapable of understanding reality, her attorneys introduced a new strategy: a mistake-based defense rooted in panic and psychological shock. They filed a legal motion requesting permission to present expert testimony regarding Moore's psychological state at the time of delivery. Importantly, they were not claiming she was legally insane. Instead, they wanted the jury to understand her state of mind during an unexpected medical emergency. Their argument was simple but controversial. Moore did not intend to harm the baby. She made a series of tragic, dangerous decisions under extreme emotional stress, confusion, and fear. In legal terms, this defense was meant to challenge the prosecution's claim of culpable negligence, a level of reckless behavior that shows total disregard for human life. The defense argued that her actions, while medically unsafe, were not driven by cruelty or intent, but by shock and denial. To support this, the defense planned to introduce testimony from medical experts, including a nurse practitioner who specialized in childbirth and emergency deliveries. According to her findings, the baby's injuries could have occurred during an uncontrolled birth or from a fall onto the bathroom floor. She also suggested medical complications may have interfered with the baby's breathing immediately after delivery. Her conclusion was shocking. The death could have been an accident. The defense described the event as a tragic medical emergency that spiraled out of control, not a deliberate act of violence. Still, prosecutors remained firm. They argued that regardless of panic or fear, Moore failed to take the most basic life-saving steps. She did not call for help, she did not attempt resuscitation, and she disposed of the body in a trash can. To them, this was not a mistake. It was a crime. And just as the courtroom prepared for a fierce battle of experts, something even more disturbing surfaced: evidence from Moore's phone.
Just as the defense began building its case around panic, confusion, and medical trauma, prosecutors introduced a devastating piece of evidence that threatened to destroy the entire narrative: text messages recovered from Brianna Moore's phone. These messages dated back to September 2023, several months before the baby was born. At that time, Moore would have already been pregnant. Whether she knew it or not would become one of the most critical questions in the trial. In a series of private messages exchanged with a contact stored under the name Kasim, Moore allegedly took part in a conversation about pregnancy prevention and abortion methods. The tone of the messages was casual, almost joking, which made them even more disturbing. According to court filings, the messages clearly referenced Plan A, Plan B, and what Kasim referred to as Plan C. While the early plans allegedly referred to condoms and contraceptive pills, Plan C was described in explicit and violent terms. Prosecutors argue these messages demonstrate a willingness to consider killing a baby if other options failed. The prosecution did not claim these messages alone proved murder, but they did argue something just as powerful. They showed state of mind. Their position was clear. Even if Moore did not intend the baby's death in the bathroom, these earlier conversations proved she had already considered extreme outcomes. That, they said, destroyed the defense's claim that she was completely shocked, unaware, and psychologically unprepared for pregnancy. In response, Moore's attorneys fought aggressively to exclude the messages from trial. They argued that the texts were dark humor, taken out of context, and did not prove intent. They also said the messages had occurred months before the birth and should not be used to define her mental state during labor. The judge now must decide, should the jury get to see these messages or not? Meanwhile, the defense continued preparing expert testimony to explain Moore's psychological condition. One psychiatrist, specializing in maternal mental health, was expected to testify about trauma-related dissociation. According to preliminary assessments, Moore may have entered a numbed, detached mental state during the unexpected birth. Experts describe dissociation as a condition where reality feels distant, emotions shut down, and actions occur without logical processing. In such a state, a person may feel as though events are happening outside their body, as if they are watching themselves from a distance. Supporters of the defense argue that Moore didn't ignore her baby out of cruelty, but because her mind could not properly process what was happening around her. However, prosecutors were prepared with their own medical experts. Their medical examiner concluded that the baby's injuries and breathing failure strongly supported homicide as the manner of death. They also stressed that even if panic existed, it did not excuse abandoning a newborn without medical aid. The case was quickly turning into a battle between two interpretations of the same tragedy. Was this an overwhelmed teenager suffering a psychological collapse? Or was this a young woman who made conscious decisions that led to a baby's death? Another critical issue haunted the courtroom. If Moore truly did not know she was pregnant, how could she have sent those messages months earlier? The defense suggested denial, a rare but documented condition where a woman psychologically blocks awareness of pregnancy. The prosecution called that explanation unrealistic. As pre-trial hearings continued, one fact became clear. This case would hinge not on what happened in the bathroom alone, but on what was happening inside Brianna Moore's mind months before that night. And with the trial approaching, the question remained: would the jury see a frightened young woman who made fatal mistakes, or a defendant whose past words revealed a darker truth?
As Brianna Moore prepares to face a jury, the weight of her decisions, both inside and outside the bathroom, now rests in the hands of the court. Each legal strategy, expert opinion, and past message will be dissected in front of strangers who must determine whether her actions were the result of tragic confusion or criminal disregard. Perhaps the most shocking moment in this case came when Moore rejected a plea deal offered by the prosecution. The deal would have sent her to prison for 20 years, followed by 10 years of supervised probation. For many defendants facing the possibility of 30 years or more, such an offer would be accepted immediately. Moore said no. Legal analysts believe this decision suggests her defense team is confident in the psychological and medical explanations they plan to present at trial. But rejection of a plea deal also carries enormous risk. If convicted, Moore could receive a harsher sentence than what was originally offered, a harsh reality known in the justice system as the trial penalty. During pre-trial hearings, the judge partially approved the defense's request to introduce expert testimony about Moore's mental state, but not all of it.
This legal ruling alone may shape the entire outcome. The jury may hear why Moore reacted the way she did, but they will not be allowed to consider mental illness as a reason to avoid responsibility. In simple terms, they may hear why she panicked, but not excuses for the outcome. Meanwhile, the prosecution is expected to focus on one undeniable reality: a baby was born alive and died without receiving medical help. No matter how confused Moore may have felt, prosecutors argue that she still made multiple choices. She chose not to call for help. She chose not to alert campus staff. She chose to dispose of the baby's body. To them, these are not mistakes. They are deliberate omissions that led directly to death. Public reaction to this case has been intense and deeply divided. Some see Moore as a terrified teenager, trapped in denial and fear. Others see her as someone who abandoned her responsibility in the most irreparable way possible. Former prosecutors reviewing the case have warned that the medical examiner's findings and the digital messages could be devastating to the defense. Even without proving intentional harm, the law only requires proof of reckless disregard for life to convict on aggravated manslaughter. But the defense holds on to one final hope: reasonable doubt. If even one juror believes Moore truly did not understand what was happening during labor, that her mind shut down under shock, then a full conviction may not be possible. Yet no verdict can undo the tragedy. At the center of this storm is a baby who never had a chance to experience life. And at the center of the courtroom will be a young woman whose future will be shaped forever by the choices she made during the most frightening hours of her life. When the trial begins, the jury will be asked a simple but devastating question: was this an unthinkable accident or an unforgivable crime? The answer will determine everything.